So I just finished watching The Washing Machine by Hans Rosling and Sheryl WuDunn, Our Centerys. I'm not sure if I said that right, but it's Our Centerys and Great Injustice. And I thought they were really interesting. To start off with Hans Rosling, he talked about the washing machine. And he talked about when he was growing up, as his childhood or in his childhood, they didn't have that. And how his mother would have to wash clothes by hand every day or every time she needed to. And he stated how she was a mother of six. And he said that he never realized how much time consuming that was, but it really was. And that his parents both worked hard to be able to afford that washing machine so that they would be able to have it in their home, so that it would be able to let them do other things that they couldn't without having one because of time and because they would use it to wash clothes. Therefore, they finally were able to afford a washing machine. And once they were, Rosaling's grandmother was over and they were all right there looking at the washing machine. And she was really excited about seeing it. So she wanted to be the first one to press the button so that she can see how the washer machine worked and she could see the clothes in there being washed. Therefore, she pushed the button and she was just amazed. And then he talked about how sometimes we as people in the United States take for granted what we have, especially having a washing machine. Sometimes we don't realize how time consuming it is to wash clothes by hand instead of by a washing machine, which thanks to technology and to being here in the United States, we are very privileged to have one. Therefore, he talks about how people have their many electronics, especially in Sweden, that electronics he never thought of would exist now exist. He stated how 2 billion people live on $2 or less a day. Then there are 1 billion of rich people who live on what he calls the airline, which use more than $8 a day. And 4 billion people are in the middle. He talks about how not everyone has a washing machine and how he once stated in a classroom if they thought it would be fair if everybody had a washing machine, even all over the world. And to his surprise, everybody said no, they didn't think it was fair and that not everybody should have a washing machine. But once he stated and asked how many of you have a car and how many of you don't, and he saw the hands shoot up of how many did and how many didn't, then he went on to how many of you don't have a washer machine. And not one of the people in his class could raise their hand because every single one of them had a washing machine. So I thought that was really powerful because then he stated, just like everybody here has a washing machine, wouldn't it be nice if they had a washing machine? And how thanks to the washing machine that we have here, we can use our time productively. Instead of taking forever or hours a day in washing clothes, we can use those hours that would be used as washing clothes to do homework, to read, to be able to go out with our family, to be able to go out and just have a good time with friends. And then after that, he also stated how it's just very unfair how in some other parts, he wishes that they did have washing machines so that they could have that privilege. And he showed a picture of a chart with 3 different lines and then around 4, and it talked about how there were some people in the poverty area, some people in the middle, and some people that were rich. And he said that the expectancy was that it would shift and that hopefully the people in the poverty areas would be able to move to the people in the lower income or medium areas where they can actually be able to have a washer machine. And then the people in the middle could move into the richer areas and be able to be in the air flight or whatever he calls it for the rich people. And moving on, after I watched that movie, I watched Sheryl WuDunn, and she pretty much talked about women. And she talked about how women and girls are not the problem, they are the solution. Because unfortunately, in different countries that are not the US, they believe that women are the problem. There has been higher death rates on women in different kinds of ways and really sad ways as well. She stated on how there was a woman that would get beaten at home all the time, and she had around 6 children, and her husband didn't work at all, and they lived in poverty. And she stated that they kept trying to have a boy, but they never did, and they had girls, and the guy's parents wanted him to remarry another woman so that they would be able to have a boy. However, the woman didn't get down on herself because of that. Instead, she went and started making some kind of quilt or some kind of thing that she could be able to sell. And because she started that, she started to sell it. And it started to get very famous that she started to sell more and more. So she needed to hire somebody else. After she hired somebody else, it kept getting bigger and expanding, and she needed to keep hiring until finally it got so big that she needed to send it to different parts of the city or where they were living. Therefore, she hired her husband, and then they were a part of this company together. And instead, now he lived with his wife, and they were just with their 6 or 7 daughters, because I think she had another one. And after that, she goes on talking about sex trafficking and how sometimes girls are sold for about $1 or stuff like that to go and be sex slaves, which is really sad, and how they make it affordable for this kind of things to happen, which should not be happening, but it is, and that is the sad truth. It even happens here in America. And she also talks about how they don't put enough attention to sex trafficking as they do to other things, which it should be very considerable, especially because it's talking about human beings. You know, if you are able to save an animal from a shelter and be able to take care of it, how hard is it to be able to take care of our own kind, our human beings? We are human beings, you know, our human nature. Sorry about that. It also talks about how she talked about how gender has a lot to do with it. Being a woman sometimes is tough in other parts of the country instead of being a male, because I guess they see women as a problem instead of a fix. And she started talking about how women actually are the solution, because if they get educated, they could bring more to society, and they could be an add to society and be able to help their home and everybody else. It talks about a girl who was raised poor in China, and how she had parents and they weren't able to afford to send her to school. However, somebody made a donation and she was able to go to school, finish college, and then keep going on with life. After that, she helped her parents and she helped them be able to come out of poverty and be able to build a better home with a better working toilet and things like that. And she talked about also about how there was another girl in Africa that she was dirt poor as well. Her parents couldn't afford taking her to college, but thanks to a donation that they made of a goat, her and her parents were able to make money from selling milk and what the goat provides, and cheese. And from that money, her parents found out that they could afford to pay her way through college. So they helped her get into college with that goat that was donated. And after that, she was accepted into a college in the United States. After she had been accepted, she went up to talk in the pulpit because they asked her to, because she was like one of the top of her class. And she talked about how she was the luckiest girl alive because of a goat. And then Sheryl keeps going on about how important it is to be able to keep helping, to be able to keep helping around the world. That yes, there are some downfalls to it, but sometimes you don't realize how much good comes out of it. And how sometimes we just have to have a little bit of faith for them and to give them hope so that they can live off of that and be able to become something in life and be able to strive and become the person who they can become. It's like a scriptural or a doctrinal thing. Hope isn't without faith, and faith isn't without hope. Therefore, if they have hope, they can make great things come about. And that's about what I learned from watching these 2 videos, and I realized how fortunate we are to be here in the US and to be able to be privileged in having a washing machine and working toilets. Even though sometimes we take that for granted, we do have a very big privilege to be able to have those. And it is an eye-opener every time I see or hear some kind of documentaries or listen to people talk on TED. And that's about it.